For many of us, it's been years since we first experienced the start of Animal Crossing New Horizons. At this point, the game honestly feels pretty different than what you get to know once you've been playing for months. And believe it or not, there are quite a few features you see near the start of the game that once you've seen once, you practically never see again in Animal Crossing New Horizons, despite some of them honestly being really cool. This is something that I don't see talked about too often, so I thought it'd be a fun idea to take a look at these features that basically disappear from your island forever after the start of the game. And I think by the end of this, you'll definitely be wishing that some of these would stick around. You might have already forgotten that at the start of the game, until we met Isabel, Tom Nook would actually do the daily announcements for the island, and he had a ton of his own unique dialogue for all of the different events in the game, all kinds of tips for when you're starting up and much more that typically a lot of players won't get to see most of. After all, it doesn't take you very long to get resident services started up, and then you get Isabel. Honestly, I really missed the fact that Tom Nook used to do the announcements. I think this was a really cool feature, and I like the fact that he actually did this outside so you could get a good idea of the scenery around your island and also who was visiting the Resident Services Plaza that day. It's also crazy to think how much dialogue they must have written for Tom Nook for all of the different events and such. But like I said, most players probably won't even see half of this dialogue as it doesn't take too long until you upgrade Resident Services. I think that with the huge 2.0 update, Nintendo should have made it so that Tom Nook could actually sometimes take over for the announcements. Maybe they could make up an excuse that Isabel was just too busy with paperwork that day or visiting her family. Maybe she's actually running an event out in the Resident Services Plaza, so it'd make more sense for Tom Nook to do these announcements. Since they've already written all this dialogue, it would have been really easy for them to do, so it's a shame that Tom Nook effectively gets pushed to the side after this point. Although he still has a much bigger role in this game than he did in Animal Crossing New Leaf, which I think is great. That's not the only Nook related feature that disappears soon into the early game though. You might remember that very early on, Timmy would actually wander around your island holding his very adorable flag. And this was a great feature. As far as I remember, we never really saw Timmy or Tommy wander outside of their shop in past games. I'd honestly love to see more of the hard-working characters around our island do this. Just take a little break and walk around and chat with us. It definitely makes the game feel a lot more alive in my opinion, but sadly, like with Tom Nook's announcements, once they get Nook's Cranny, you won't really be able to see them do this ever again. I kinda get why they did this. After all, you don't really need the advice from Timmy anymore. But it was just nice to see him hanging around, and like I said, it brings so much more personality to your island. It makes the place feel much more alive. I also just like seeing Timmy in a different environment other than Nook's Cranny. I definitely hope in the next game they let these special characters have more breaks and just wander around. They don't need to give us anything or sell us anything, just give them some fun dialogue and let us see them interact with the world. Of course, this can also be extended to Harvey, who only visits your island a singular time and then never again. Thankfully, now that Harvey's island has gotten upgraded, you do get to see him walking around that environment a bit more, which is cool, and it makes sense, of course. It is his island, so of course he's going to be over there. But I also do think it's a little bit sad we only get to see him on our islands once. I've seen so many people do really cool photo opportunities with Harvey and Timmy when they're walking around the island early on, and sadly this isn't something you can really do later. If you never talk to Harvey, then he would pretty much keep wandering around your island forever as far as I know. But that definitely wouldn't be worth it given how good Harvey's Island is with all of its shops now. I guess technically this would be one of the only times that you can see him do group stretching as well, I believe. So really, you'd want to make sure you do all of this stuff early on, otherwise you won't get the chance in the future. So yes, Nintendo, in the next game, please have these special characters wandering around as a feature. I'm sure a lot of people would really love that. Another cool feature that definitely makes sense why they took this out, but you know what, I still like it and I want to mention it. It's the fact that early on is the only time that your Resident Services actually has its own shop, which is incredibly convenient. Now, of course, at this point in the game, you don't have a shop as its own thing. You don't have Nook's Cranny yet, so it definitely makes sense to have one in Resident Services. But once you do get Nook's Cranny, Timmy and Tommy disappear from this place and no longer can you sell or buy items from Resident Services, unless of course you go to the ABD and you check out your Nook shopping tab, but that's very much a separate thing in my opinion. I really like the idea of having a little separate shop that a character could run in Resident Services that would sell different items, not one that you need to use Nook miles for or anything like that, just a regular old shop. Or really, even just a point to sell things. After all, sometimes our islands feel very big and complicated to get around, so having one in resident services would definitely be a very convenient point for visitors and even our own player. I will say though, this is definitely not one of the most necessary things. I don't miss this as much as some of the other features I've listed in this video. I just thought it was worth mentioning because again, it's something that really only happens once early on and it's gone. I've talked about this one before in past videos, but I thought I should have a quick mention for it here as well. The little kits that you get where you have to craft certain items in order to get free villagers to move to your island is definitely a very unique feature to the game that is only used once. Now, I definitely get why they did this. This really acts as a tutorial for crafting a bunch of different items. It allows you to get more recipes and craft different types of things in order to get villagers to move in. And typically, I feel like a lot of people might find it kind of annoying if you have to craft things every single time you want a new villager to move in. But at the same time, it's also kind of a neat little quest, and it's so unique. There's really nothing like this in any of the other main Animal Crossing games. Crafting is also such an important feature, so it makes sense to utilize it, right? Yet they forgot about this one for sure, in my opinion. I would typically say that it's for the best this isn't featured for every single plot, so you don't just have to craft so many items in order to get people to move in. But it would have been a fun little quest to do maybe a few more times, at least to get all of your original villagers moved into the island. This next feature is also pretty unique. It's the fact that you can see Mabel as a vendor in the Resident Services Plaza very early on. Now, of course, she disappears from here because she starts to run and manage her own shop, the Able Sisters, so it doesn't make sense to have her as a vendor anymore. But then again, I do find this really cool and it's super unique. We haven't really seen Mabel do anything like this in the past games. In fact, we never even really saw her outside of the Able Sisters ever. I believe this also makes her the only vendor in the game who appears once in this sort of circumstance and then never again. I definitely thought they would do this with more characters, honestly. Like, for example, maybe Brewster would have come here with a little coffee cart for a while, and then eventually he would have upgraded to a full cafe in the museum. But nope, it's only really utilized with Mabel. Another unique feature with her as well is the fact that she will sell shoes at this point, a task that later on is taken up by Kix. So definitely a really unique interaction with Mabel, and I don't know, I just kind of like the fact that she has a traveling cart. It's really cool to me. I definitely won't say I prefer that over the Able Sisters building though, the same with the little shop in Resident Services. Finally, what you've been listening to throughout this video, the Prologue music. I love the Prologue music, it's some of my favorite music in the game. But sadly, this music track feature, which actually changes as you make more progress, disappears once you get the hourly music. I definitely get why this happens. The hourly music is an iconic part of Animal Crossing and I can't imagine the game without it, but I just had to give a quick little shout out to this Prologue music. But let me know in the comment section down below, what features do you miss from the early game of Animal Crossing New Horizons, and in general, what do you miss about the atmosphere of starting up the game for the very first time? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you made it to the end, be sure to comment Bob's Gang down below so I know that you did. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and turn on channel notifications for more Animal Crossing videos. I want to say thank you to these channel members for supporting me and the content that I make here. Their contributions allow me to keep making videos. If you want to support these videos and get some great perks for doing so, like access to our members only Discord, exclusive Bob emojis and much more, then click the join button down below the video or the link in the description.